Hello everyone. We are going to talk about Union Budget 2025, key measures and its implication. The government announced its first Union Budget since the general elections earlier this year. Ahead of the budget announcement, there were concerns that the ruling party's inability to win a majority in the recent elections and need to appease its coalition partners would compromise the government's plan to stick to path of fiscal prudence. However, these fears were mostly allayed with the budget plan seeking to deliver a reduction in fiscal deficit target while still addressing most of the key growth and reform needs. We believe this budget can be dubbed as a continuation budget with the government aiming to focus on the economy and its employment agenda, in addition to fiscal prudence and growth. Here are our key takeaways. The first budget of the government in its third term signaled broad policy continuity, striking a balance between macro stability and medium-term economic growth. The budget retained the capex targets in line with the interim budget. The buffer from higher RBI dividend transfer is being utilized to lower the fiscal deficit and increase targeted spending in areas such as new employment and skilling and training schemes, agriculture and food-related support, a special assistance to states, and credit support for affordable housing, amongst others. The government reiterates its commitment to fiscal consolidation by reducing the fiscal 25 central government fiscal deficit target to 4.9% of GDP from 5.6% in fiscal 24. The fiscal 26 deficit is now expected to be lower than the stated intent of 4.5% of GDP, which looks achievable in our view. From fiscal 27 onwards, the government will set a fiscal deficit path that will keep the central government debt to GDP percentage on a declining path. This could give the government greater flexibility to decide on an appropriate fiscal trajectory based on domestic and global macro conditions. The budget not only addressed the immediate economic issues but also laid down a policy roadmap for the next 5 years. The government has also promised to formulate an economic policy framework for long-term economic development with next-generation reforms focusing on productivity of factors of production like land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, and efficiency of markets and sectors in collaboration with the state governments. Overall, the budget supports our constructive view on the Indian economy. The standout initiatives include the increased focus on employment and skilling, improving ease of doing business for micro, small, and medium enterprises to further manufacturing growth, continuing emphasis on capex to support infrastructure development, corporate tax rate cut to 35% from 40% for foreign firms investing in India to attract them to set up production bases in India. The prudent fiscal and monetary policy should help ensure macro stability, forming the basis of a sustained growth trajectory. Highlights of the Union Budget. Number 1. Fiscal 25 estimates similar to Fiscal 24 interim budget. Government has largely maintained the estimates for the tax revenues, that is 11% year-on-year growth, and capital expenditure, which is 15% year-on-year growth. Government has further reduced its Fiscal 25 fiscal deficit target by 20 basis points, aided by the dividend received from the RBI. Number 2. A special focus on employment and skilling. Budget estimates saw an increase in non-capex expenditure driven by new employment generation related payments. With additional incentives for manufacturing companies, this will aid in increased formalization of the labor force. Number 3. Building blocks for long-term focus areas. The budget provided a blueprint for key focus areas of the government like nuclear energy, support for SMEs, land reforms, rural and urban both, development of e-commerce and export hubs, and 12 new industrial parks. Number 4. Benefits to drive consumption. Personal income tax has been tweaked to provide additional benefit to individuals under the new tax regime. The annual tax savings could be up to Rs 17,500 tax deduction at source has been rationalized and reduced for many categories. Number 5. Building capabilities for a Viksit Bharat, that is, developed India. A government mission to transform the country into a developed country by its 100th independence in 2046. Thrust on capex and manufacturing to continue. Number 6. Capex focus reiterated. Government capex is expected to act as a catalyst to spur private capex. Infra spending to increase by 15% year-on-year. Increased assistance is given to states. Number 7. Focus on energy and manufacturing. New energy focus continues with additional allocation to solar rooftop schemes. Initiatives with private sector for nuclear energy. Trade guarantee schemes for MSMEs in the manufacturing sector. Number 8. Focus on employment and skilling. Incentives given for formalizing of labor force with additional incentives to manufacturing sector. Government guaranteed loans for skilling programs. Internship schemes for 10 million students with top 500 corporates using corporate social responsibility funds. Number 9. Building the buffer for sustainable economic expansion. Sticking to its fiscal consolidation roadmap with reduction in fiscal deficit is a positive for medium-term inflation and interest rates. Number 10. Capital gains tax hiked. Long-term capital gains and short-term capital gains has been hiked for listed equity instruments from 10% to 12.5% and from 15% to 20% respectively. Indexation benefit for gold and immovable property has been removed, although long-term capital gains on these instruments has been reduced from 20% to 12.5%. Also, holding period for gold, unlisted bonds and debentures has been lowered to 24 months for classification of long-term capital assets. Number 11. Raising securities transaction tax to reduce retail futures and options activity. Securities transaction tax (STT) was hiked to 0.1% on sale of options and to 0.02% on sale of futures. Now, here are the implications for the equities market. Headlines around the capital gains tax rate hike initially resulted in some market volatility. However, we believe the simplification of the tax code is a long-term positive for equities and adds to an already strong fundamental outlook for earnings. There is a continued push on capex with a shift to focus more on soft infrastructure, education, skilling, training institutions, subsidized internship, whilst maintaining hard infra focus, perhaps due to the elections. The industrial sector would likely continue to benefit from the capex build-out theme. We continue to be bullish on the long-term economic growth outlook for India. 12-month forward Nifty valuations remains balanced at 20.5 times price to earnings. These are measured against a backdrop of mid-teens earnings growth over the next 2 years. Domestic inflows remain robust, supporting the market. Our equity strategy has a reasonable cyclical and growth tilt to play on India's long-term economic growth, with industrials, manufacturing and real estate being our largest sector overweights. Thank you.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.